They told you freedom would come at 65. That if you worked hard, stayed loyal, and kept climbing the ladder for 4 decades, one day you'd be free, free to travel, to relax, to finally live. They painted retirement as the promised land, the reward at the end of a long, obedient life. But what if that promise was never real? What if it was a carefully crafted illusion designed to keep you moving, producing, complying without ever questioning the cost? For most of your life, the script has been clear: study hard, get a job, work for 40 years, retire. That's the plan, that's the path. And most people follow it without ever asking who wrote it in the first place. Imagine for a moment a vast, shimmering ocean. You spend your entire life building a magnificent ship, preparing for a journey to an island called freedom. You sacrifice everything to make that ship perfect. You endure storms, repair leaks, and navigate treacherous waters. You hear whispers of the island's beauty, the endless beaches, the quiet tranquility, and you tell yourself just a little longer, just a little further. But when you finally arrive, the island is nothing like the brochures. It's a barren rock, and a sign says, "Welcome to the end of the line." This isn't just a metaphor. According to a 2020 study by the Stanford Center on Longevity, over two-thirds of retirees in America feel disoriented within just 18 months of retiring. And not because they ran out of money, but because they ran out of identity. They suddenly wake up in a world where their role, their purpose, their very sense of self has vanished. The system didn't prepare them for freedom. It prepared them to function. It trained them to operate within a machine, not to live beyond it. Retirement isn't the grand reward they were promised. It's the quiet dismissal from the stage. The moment the role ends, the spotlight fades, and no one tells you what to do next. And that's where the existential crisis begins. Because what do you do when you've spent your entire life performing a role and then that role disappears? Who are you? Without your job title, without the emails, the deadlines, the meetings that made you feel important. For decades, your value was measured by productivity, not presence. And now that the system no longer needs you, you're expected to know how to simply enjoy life without ever having been taught how. If you're feeling a sense of unease, a quiet whisper in the back of your mind, it's because you're starting to see the edges of the lie. This is just the beginning of the journey. Subscribe to this channel, follow along, and join us as we pull back the curtain on the deepest deceptions of modern life and discover the stunning truths that lie beneath. The lie runs deeper than just retirement. It extends all the way back to the beginning of your story. From the moment you were old enough to understand the world, you were taught to wait, to postpone joy, to delay life. First, it was when I graduate, then when I get the job, when I get promoted, when I pay off the house, when I retire, then you'll be happy. Then you'll feel free. Then you'll really start living. But then never comes because you've been conditioned to chase it. Like a mirage on the horizon that disappears every time you think you're close. Your brain has been trained not to experience the present, but to project constantly into a future that doesn't exist. This isn't just a metaphor. Behavioral psychology has a name for it: delay discounting. It's the tendency to undervalue present experiences in favor of imagined rewards later. The more you delay gratification, the more you train your mind to believe that now is never enough, that life is always somewhere else. This isn't a new phenomenon. It's a tale as old as time, replayed in our modern world. Consider the ancient Greek myth of Sisyphus. He was condemned to an eternity of rolling a boulder up a hill, only for it to roll back down every time it neared the top. We often see this as a punishment for his defiance of the gods. But what if it's more? What if it's a parable about the futility of a life spent in perpetual, aimless labor? We're told to strive, to climb, to produce, but no one teaches us how to simply exist. So when the striving ends, the silence is deafening. And in it, you feel the weight of everything you once postponed, the curiosity you never followed, the passions you buried, the parts of you that didn't fit the role, so they were left behind. And that's the illusion. The idea that your value lies in being useful, that worth equals function. But as Alan Watts once said, you are not a role, you are the playing of life itself. You were never meant to be just one thing. Life was never meant to be a single job title carried to the grave. But it takes courage to face the void that opens when the role ends, because that void isn't empty. It's full of questions, the kind you were too busy to ask when the calendar ruled your life. What do I love? What moves me? What do I believe in beyond what I was told to believe? These are the questions that mark the beginning of real freedom. But they require the death of the old identity, the dismantling of the mask, the shedding of the function, the birth of a self that was hidden beneath the role. And maybe that's why the system never wanted you to stop, because in silence, you remember who you were before the mask. And that memory, that spark, that is the beginning of something the machine cannot control. A self that is free, not because it retired from work, but because it awakened to life. If you found a flicker of truth in this, and if you've had your own experience with this kind of quiet struggle, don't keep it to yourself. Let us know in the comments below. And if you're just beginning to see that there's more to life than the script they gave you, then you're in the right place. Subscribe and stay with us. The lie was never just about retirement. The real lie was that you ever needed to wait for freedom at all. Maybe freedom was never a destination. It was a way of being, one you could have chosen at any point. But no one told you that, because a free person be controlled. A free person doesn't need the script. A free person sees retirement not as a reward, but as a reminder that we traded our days for a promise that was never real. Because when your life is built around schedules, deadlines, productivity metrics, and future goals, you lose touch with the present moment, with your own inner compass, with what it means to live a life you've actually chosen. You weren't born to be a gear in a machine. You were born to experience life, to feel deeply, to create, to connect, to explore. But a system that runs on control has no room for that kind of freedom. So it sells you a version of life that feels safe, structured, respectable, and quietly drains your spirit in the process. This is the part no one prepares you for. When the meetings stop, the titles disappear, and the calendar goes blank. On the surface, you should feel free, but instead, many feel lost. Not because they miss the work, but because they lose themselves. They no longer know who without the role. The identity they spent decades building is suddenly gone. According to the National Institute on Aging, depression rates increased by over 40% during the first year of retirement. It's not because people lack money, comfort, or time. It's because they're forced to answer a question they've never asked. If I'm no longer working, who am I? This is the crisis that hides beneath the surface, the one no financial advisor can prepare you for. It's not about income, it's about identity. And when that identity was built on function, its collapse feels like a quiet death. A death that happens while you're still breathing. Alan Watts saw this trap decades ago. He warned us, stop measuring your life, live it. But that message is hard to hear in a society that rewards planning and punishes presence. We're told that productivity is virtue, that hustle is meaning, that slowing down is weakness. So we internalize the belief that rest must be earned, that joy is a luxury, that aliveness is conditional. And before we know it, our entire existence becomes a rehearsal, a long, anxious preparation for a performance that never begins. But here's the truth. There is no grand finale, no perfect moment, no final destination where everything makes sense and nothing hurts. Life is happening right now, in the chaos, in the quiet, in the uncertainty, in the breath you just took. And if you can't touch it now, you won't touch it later, because later is just another word for never, when you've been taught to delay everything. The system doesn't just steal your time, it steals your presence. It convinces you that living is something you do after you've earned it, but you don't have to earn your own existence. You never did. You don't need permission to feel joy. You don't need a reason to be fully alive. So the question is no longer, when will you start living? The real question is, will you ever stop waiting? Because the lie was never just about retirement. The real lie was that you ever had to earn your freedom. And the truth, you were free the moment you stopped waiting.